Daniel chapter 3. I'm going to review for just a few moments because we're on part 2 of Endure Hardness as a Good Christian Soldier. By the way, I mentioned Sunday night I didn't have paisley ties. I now have 6 of them. Sunday night, my son gave me one, then Bruce gave me one, and then maybe Bruce gave me 2, and then Nick gave me 1 or 2, and then our faithful couple here in the front row, Jackie and Catherine, drove by, pulled up at our house. I thought they were going to do a drive-by shooting. Their son jumped out, had a bag, 2 brand new paisley ties. So if you'd like to buy a paisley tie, I'm a paisley tie sales representative now. I got a bunch of them. We mentioned last week the word, by the way, next Sunday is Membership Sunday, and we encourage you, everybody, to be here, but especially if you've never joined our church. We talk scripturally about church membership, and next week you can have you can really join the church any week if you've been saved and baptized, but we'll talk about it. We encourage you to be here next Sunday. Endure hardness as a good Christian soldier. We're not going to read from 2 Timothy this morning, but we did last week. We mentioned that the word endure, as you're turning to Daniel 3, the word endure means to last, to be fixed, to bear, to suffer resistance, to support without breaking or yielding to force or pressure. Basically, not quitting. Hardness, difficulty. We read, endure hardness as a good Christian soldier, Paul said to Timothy. Hardness, the word hardness is difficulty to be executed, harshness, roughness, hardship. We mentioned last week that we want to encourage our church to endure as good Christian soldiers. Be in this walk with God for the rest of your life. You don't quit. Don't quit. God wants us to be warriors, men, not wimps for God. Our desire and the Lord's desire to see many people serving God 25 years from today. Okay? I remember our college president said God doesn't measure Christianity in years. He measures it in decades, 10-year increments. We live in an easy-to-quit society that makes quitting the normal thing to do. I mentioned last week the average marriage lasts 7 years. Then they quit. Don't quit your marriage. The average second marriage lasts less than that. Don't quit your second marriage. By the way, I'm not encouraging you to go on a second marriage, okay? Some are. Don't quit your second marriage, okay? The average faithful church member lasts 7 years. Don't quit your church. Don't quit your God. I commend the people that have been around here for 20 years, the Chows and Jerry and Danny Sin and Ratana Sin. A lot of sin around here, been a long time. Thank God for people that serve the Lord for decades. There's always a reason to quit, and to quit God, and quit church, and quit your spouse, and quit your children, and quit. Only 1 in 4 college freshmen end up graduating. Say, what do? They quit. Average youth pastor lasts about 1.5 years. Thank God we have a youth pastor that's been here for a long time. Average pastor lasts about 4 years. High school dropout rate is unbelievable. We mentioned last week, this is all review. To endure, we must look at others who have endured. Look at others. And we read from Hebrews 12. So we're supposed to look to Jesus because he endured the cross. But by the way, that's one reason you want to be in the fellowship of the church. Because when you're in church and you develop relationships with other Christians, you're going to find out, here's a Christian over here. They've been walking with God for a long time. They went through cancer. They went through the loss of a baby. They went through some difficult financial problems. And they've endured. We are motivated by models. And when there's the world calls them support groups. By the way, I don't think you need a support group outside the church. The church will give you the support you need. But to endure, we must look to others. And God, and also rubbing shoulders with others that have had it off more difficult than us. And I mentioned last week, read The Trail of Blood, Fox's Book of Martyrs. And and be around godly people that have. We have one of our new ladies. Actually, I met her about a year ago, and she was on her wheelchair. Her name is Mary Glass, and she and invited her to church, and she's joined the church, and she was already saved, and she fell. She fell, and she broke her foot, just blew it all apart, and she's been in this rehabilitation home right over here in Pacific for almost 4 months, and she has a real good spirit. And I visited her on yesterday. I was visiting her, and she said, and she always has a good spirit, even in the hospital. And people go visit her, and they're like, "Wow, she encourages me." But she says, "I'm not sure why God has me here, but I'll find out." And I said, "Mary, I don't know all the reason why God has." And by the way, hopefully, she said she'll be out Christmas, and she said she wants to be in church on Christmas, and so that'll be about 4 months around Christmas. But I said, Mary, what God wants to do is God wants to use you to encourage others that have been in the hospital. And so enduring sometimes what helps, we must have others that have endured and get around. Listen, don't do this. Don't get around a bunch of quitters, because they'll tell you to quit. Okay, you've heard the story. You get around the wrong people, man, they'll hang you. I mean, they won't purposely hang you, but they will. The one guy went up, and the guy was going to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and one guy says, "Hey, I'll go help him. Let me go talk to him, and I'll help him, and I'll talk him out of it." And once he got up there for about 15 minutes, they both jumped. Okay, so make sure you're getting advice from the right people. Let me say this: when you are in a difficult situation, you're very vulnerable. You're very easy to take counsel from anybody. Okay, so make sure that you're with the right people. Then we said there's a price tag for not enduring. This is all review from last week. Folks, quitting is not the answer. Quitting doesn't make it better. Okay, well, I'm just going to quit. Okay, I'm just going to quit. I'm going to quit God. I'm going to quit my husband. I'm going to quit my wife. I'm going to quit my kids. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to quit. Quitting is not the answer. Okay, it doesn't make things better. And I've many times mentioned referred to the book The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. It's not a Christian book. It's a 25-year case history of what happens with divorce. By the way, we have wonderful people that have divorced in our church. That book is not for you. It's over. That book is for the person that, I don't know who it would be, and I don't know if there's anybody. But one of these days you're going to think, man, I'd like to get rid of this guy. Can't believe I have him. I can't believe I have her. Divorce is not what you think it is. Okay? It has many, many, many consequences. There's a price tag on quitting, whatever it might be. Quitting God. And I've been serving the Lord for 30 plus years. I've never met anyone, any true Christian, anyone who's truly born again that quit God, and they said, you know what? That's the best thing that ever happened to me. I've met many that said it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Don't quit. Don't quit God. Don't quit your marriage. Don't quit your family. Then there's also a price tag, we said number 3, on those that don't endure for windows of time. Look, I'm 51, 24? He's 24. He's times 2. Okay. Now, the older I get, the more stories I have. And I don't mean just stories about myself. I'm a pastor. Okay, I pastor 2 churches now, and I have a lot of stories. And I'm going to just tell you this. You mark it down. Many good people, they go away from God. They have a lapse of faith. By the way, there's some people that go away from God, and they're sitting in church here today. Okay, just because you're in church doesn't mean you're walking with God. And they go away from God, by the way, probably the number one reason because they get offended at God or they get offended at somebody. Okay, so you might want to realize that is one of Satan's traps. That's his bait. Okay, you got to realize Satan's out there working. But I've met many people or members of our church, and they'll slip away, maybe in the church, okay, or maybe slip away from the church for a little while, slip away, and they come back. But I'm going to say this. They always come back with scars. And I'm going to tell you what, if you have children, I'll tell you the number one scar is your children. One of your children, or maybe two of your children, or maybe all your children, they never recover. You recover, but they don't. You see, when you leave God and you leave the brothers and you leave the sisters, you know what you usually do? You start criticizing. You criticize the church and you criticize people. You know what you do? You poison your children. You come back and you understand people are people. You understand we're a bunch of sinners. You understand that there's nobody perfect. You understand she didn't mean to say that. She just had a slip of the tongue. But your children, they're 10, 11, and 12, they didn't get it. And guess what now? They don't respect the church. They don't respect the people in the church. And now you're getting it. You're coming to the altar and God's speaking to your heart and they're going like this. You lost them. By the way, I know what I'm talking about. You can't slip and you can't have a little window of time where you slip without some consequences. Abraham went to Egypt. Listen, anytime you see in the Bible when someone goes to Egypt, it's not good. There was a financial problem. By the way, don't let financial problems cause you to make bad decisions. Okay? And Abraham went down to Egypt for a little bit. What did he do? He picked up Hagar, and I told you a little bit of the story. And to this day, we're still bearing some of the consequences. David, David still in the New Testament, he's still called a man after God's own heart. However, he did, as my brother actually showed us some pictures on Thursday night, he went on in different parts of the world, they use their roofs for usable space. Okay, we use our roofs for the crows and pigeons to walk on, but they use it they have these flat roofs. And David got up on the flat roof and he saw some lady, Bathsheba, on another flat roof, and she was bathing. And he thought he can get away with it, but you say, what happened? David bounced back later. Thank God, we have Psalms 51. But because of that decision, David's kids messed up. There's a price tag. You cannot I'll just take it easy on God for a season. I'll take it easy on the will of God for a season. And you can't come back and think that it's all going to be the same. And there's so much to be said. Then we said last week, number 4, there are great rewards for enduring. By the way, the Lord says, if you diligently seek him, he will reward you. You say, well, how does he reward you? Let God decide how to reward you. He knows how to best reward you. You say, well, I want this. Maybe that's like a kid saying, listen, you know what I want for dinner? I want 4 Snicker bars and a marshmallow. Yeah, sure it is. He'll be in a hypoglycemic coma before you know it. That's how we are. God, I want this. God's saying, now listen, son, you don't understand, and I'm not going to give you the details. I'm going to give you something better. I'm going to give you a porterhouse steak. Okay? I don't believe in red meat. Listen, come on, enough of that stuff. Give me some red meat. All right? There are great rewards for enduring. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not, if we don't quit. There are rewards. God is a rewarder of those not that passively or easily or softly, but that diligently seek him. By the way, I'm glad I didn't quit. There's been times as a new Christian I want to quit. I'll mention at the end of the message, times when I was a new Bible college student. When I first started the church, I wanted to quit. You say, Pastor, have you ever wanted to quit? All the time. But don't quit. Ruth did not quit. I mentioned last week, famine, her husband died, discouraged mother-in-law, she reaped a godly Boaz. David didn't quit when his leader Saul compromised, when his followers wanted to stone him at Ziklag, when his leader criticized him, when his leader tried to kill him. David reaped the kingdom. Joseph didn't quit. His brothers criticized him. His father misunderstood him. His brothers bitterly sold him into slavery. Potiphar's wife falsely accused him. Potiphar put him in prison based on false accusation. The butler and baker forgot about him, but Joseph reaped being the prime minister of Egypt and saving the Jewish people because he didn't quit. Paul didn't quit, falsely accused, beaten, put in prison, perils of robbers, I mean, perils, the word perils means problems. Perils by his own countrymen, perils in the city, perils in the wilderness, perils in the sea, perils among false brethren, weariness, painfulness. Paul reaped being the greatest missionary church planter in the history of Christianity. Don't quit. You'll reap if you don't fail not. Then we said, number 5, allow the stress to make you stronger, not weaker. And I want to say this, and men, look, we live in a soft, this isn't necessary, this point necessary for ladies, for men. Quit being so soft. So I didn't have a dad. Well, go find some guy that's strong spiritually, strong mentally, and strong emotionally. And if you're going to be a dad, you know what you're going to do? You're going to pass that curse on to your children. Then you're going to have soft children. And by the way, don't miss tonight. I'm still on making friends with unrighteous mammon. You don't want to miss tonight. It's about sluggards. We live in a country filled with sluggards. You say, what? I'll give you a commercial. Sluggards always look for an easy way. They want the easy way. They want the easiest job with the most pay. Okay? You know what? Start with the hardest job with the least pay, and it'll help your life. By the way, dads, this is another commercial break. Quit making so easy on your sons. Like a Brother Stallnaker. Remember he came and preached on men? He said, every once in a while, he has 4 sons. He had 10 kids, 5 sons or something. And he got up and he said, you know what every once in a while I'll do? 2:30 in the morning, I'll wake up. I'll go wake all my boys up and say, let's go. We're going to clean the garage. Our kids can't even wake up 8 o'clock in the morning and clean the garage. You say, what are you doing? I'm teaching them dirt hardness. We live in this such soft and, I'm not against computers. I have them, a lot of our people, and I realize we're in the day of technology, but every once in a while, put your computer away and get out and dig a hole. Get your boys out there with you. Get a gun. Go shoot, not somebody, shoot something. Just a soft. Where were we? Somewhere in the Bible. Allow stress to make you stronger. Problems aren't to run from. Problems are to face and say, okay, God, listen, nobody wants a problem. Listen, our flesh, we run from problems. We resist problems. And God says, face it. Deal with it. Quit whining. Quit complaining. Quit running. Face it. Just go through it. Go around it. Try to dig around it. Don't run from it. Problems aren't to run. I mentioned Brother Jeff last week, and he went to Iraq, came back, and it was tough on him. And look, these Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Then he went again. Him and his wife went, and I believe Brother Jeff is stronger than he's ever been. Say why? He went through it. By the way, he could have come back and become a victim. He could have turned himself into a victim. Instead, he said, you know what? And by the way, we've talked a little bit. We've had time together a little bit. I think he's a stronger man. And I think his future and the future of him and his family, him and his wife, and the ministry is stronger. Why? He didn't run from it. He didn't make himself a victim. Allow stress to make you strong. I remember Brother Kyle. Brother Kyle and Susan Beck are just wonderful Christians. And I remember as he first came here, he had some new responsibility. He's like, man, this is hard. I said, hang in there. Hang in there. You know what it's going to do? I said, it's going to make you stronger. And then he got married, and he was in Bible college. Then he had a baby. Then he had another baby. And then he had an adult Sunday school class. He started a bus route. He said, this is hard. But you know what? He didn't run from it. He didn't quit. Well, this is hard. Come on, change the voice. Change the voice. Quit having those type of voices give you counsel. You need a voice like this. Listen, we're God's people. It's going to be okay. Keep going forward. Allow stress to make you stronger, not weaker. I've told that to Bruce, too. When they first started, those guys, they didn't have a Christian upbringing. I said, listen, guys, hang in there. Go, just hang in there. And now, both those young men in our church, they're able to take on more responsibility. You say, why? Because when the pressure was there, they didn't quit. When the pressure was there, they didn't point, oh, I can't, so-and-so's not helping me, and I'm not getting. They just said, I'll bear it, and maybe I need some help, preacher, and then maybe one of the brothers in the church help them. They keep going forward. They didn't quit. By the way, if you're going in the ministry, you can't be a quitter. Say, why? Because you're fighting the devil full force. You're on the front lines. It's not easy, but I'll tell you what, it's exciting. Trials can make you stronger. By the way, often problems surface for us, and I'll mention this at the end of the message, to break generational curses. Many of us right now, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is just a preface. Many of us right now, we're in a big problem because our generational curses have allowed this problem to surface. And God is giving us an opportunity to break it. And if we go about it in a scriptural way and we're determined and we endure, you know what we're going to do? We're going to break the curse and it won't go on to our children. Then we said last week, any exciting challenge, worthwhile endeavor will take endurance, but it's worth it. Everybody wants the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but they don't want to climb the rainbow. By the way, that's not true anyway, just to let you know. Well, I want to have a good marriage. Listen, no one ever had a good marriage unless they worked at it. And they had a problem and they didn't run and, well, I'm going to my mom. Listen, don't do that. Okay? Okay? And by the way, husbands, quit running her to her mom's house. Really, your fault. Okay? Marriage, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some endurance. Child rearing. Again, look, don't, and I'm going to close the message, and I'm going to try to be as respectful about my father as possible. But many of us, we don't come from Christian homes, and our parents didn't lead us in Christian principles. You know what we're going to do? We have God, we have His Word, we have a good church. But you know what we're going to do? If we're not careful, we're going to allow the problems that our parents did not on purpose, but it was instilled in us because of their lack of character and their lack of godliness and their lack of wisdom. And guess what's going to happen? It's going to go to the third generation. Your parents were the first, you're the second. So what do we need to do? We need to endure. And then that's all review. I'm going to skip it. We said enduring takes seeing Him who's invisible. Folks, you say, how do you see Him who's invisible? You got to walk with God. You got to open the Bible. Okay? And don't open the Bible when you're the most tired and you're the most weary. Say, when's the best? It's good to open up the Bible in the morning, but this is not opening the Bible and getting something from God. You're in there for 45 minutes. You read 3 words. Okay, you might need to get up and jog a little bit or get yourself a cup of coffee. Get in that Bible when your mind is alert, when you can learn something, when you can get something. I didn't change my point, but I changed the verses in the Bible because this morning when I was reading Daniel, I just got so excited just to be reminded God's in control. I'm not in control. You're not in control. God's in control. You got to see, we read in Hebrews 11:27, by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing Him who's invisible. And then this is a new point. Let's stand together. Now we get to start the message. For you visitors, I have to be out of here in 20 minutes, so don't get so nervous. Turn to Daniel chapter 3. That was review from last week. To endure hardness as good Christian soldiers, we must have, please get this, and if I perish attitude. You say, well, what's that mean, Pastor? And I was going to actually, I changed the verses, but same principle. You remember Esther? You remember the king said, we won't go into the whole story because we will run out of time, but all the Jews were going to be annihilated. And Esther was the queen, but you couldn't go to the king without permission. And if you go to the king without permission, you can get your head cut off. You get hung. And Esther's uncle said, you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this. By the way, that's why I say you're here at Pacific Baptist providentially. You're not here by accident. Find out why you're here. They should, okay, invite me for friend day. No, God in His providence, He brought you here. But, and Esther, she was worried. And, she made a decision. She said, listen, I'm going to go talk to the king. If I perish, I perish. You know what she said? I will do what's right, whether it's good for me or it's bad for me. If you don't come to a time in your life where you say, if I perish, I perish, one of these days you're going to quit something that you're not supposed to quit. Let's look at Daniel chapter 3. It's amazing, Nebuchadnezzar, God just used Daniel to show him an unbelievable interpretation of his dream. And now this guy, anyway, we don't have time. Look at verse number 1. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. Go to verse 2. Then Nebuchadnezzar, he made this image. It's an idol. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes and the governors and the captains and the judges and everybody. Look at verse 3. The princes of the governors and the captains and judges were gathered together. And look at verse 4. Then and Harold cried aloud to you. He's got all the leaders, and he's making a command. Here it is, verse 4. Then and Harold cried aloud to you, it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, when the orchestra starts, he's saying, ye fall down and worship the golden image. So he said, listen, everybody falls down, worships this image I made when you hear the orchestra start. Look at verse 6. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of the fiery furnace. So listen, if you don't fall down and worship this idol, you're going to be thrown in the fiery furnace. Let me see if we could skip down. No, let's go on. Look at verse 7. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, the orchestra, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Now remember, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they've already been promoted in the kingdom as leaders, even though they were captives, okay, in Babylon. Now, so everybody's going along. By the way, remember this. The majority is more often wrong than right. Well, over at work, listen, is it like Pacific Baptist Corporation over there? I don't think so. Don't listen to everybody at work. Okay, ladies, don't listen to all your coworkers. Okay, well, he's a bum. Get rid of him. We're all bums. You can't get rid of all of us. We're the only ones you got. Okay. How can we go to some girl, she's never had a successful marriage, and she doesn't know God, she doesn't know the Bible, and she's Dr. Laura? I mean, come on. And I'm not endorsing Dr. Laura, but Dr. Laura's a lot better than those girls at work. Anyway, verse number 8. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They're talking about these Hebrew children. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, the orchestra starts, shall fall down and worship the golden image. Verse 11. And whoso falleth not down and worship shall be, that he should be cast in the midst of the fiery furnace. Verse 12. And there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. These are leaders now, of course, because God gave Daniel the interpretation of the dream. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men. O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? So he brings them up and asks them, just wants to get their take on it. Verse 15. Now if ye be ready, he's given another chance, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, the orchestra starts, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the fire furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Now, here's the message. Look at verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered. So the king said, I'm going to give you one more chance. Your buddy Daniel got you guys this position over here, and I'm going to give you one more chance. We're going to start the orchestra. Brother Panana, get it going. Psh! As soon as we get it going, we want to see. And then if you don't bow down to the idol, you're getting thrown in the fiery furnace. Now, here's their answer. Look at verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful. No, we're not worried about this. I would have been, they weren't. We are not careful. We are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. This is what they said. You know what they're saying? We're not going to do it. Maybe God will deliver us. Maybe. They were not sure of their deliverance. You understand that? Please get this. They're people of faith, but they weren't sure. God hadn't come in a 500-foot Jesus saying, I'm going to deliver you. They said, maybe God will deliver us. Maybe. But let's look on. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Look at verse 18. But if not, that's a good sermon right there. But if not. Well, I thought God was doing this. Let me say this. But if not. What if it doesn't what if it doesn't turn out the way I wanted it, or you wanted it, or my wife wanted it, or your wife? But if not. I like what they said. But if not, look at what they said. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image. Which, you know what they said? Listen, I think maybe possibly if God will deliver us, but if not, we're going to burn. We need to get this, church. We'll pray and have 10 minutes of a sermon. If you're going to endure, you have to say, hell or high water, sink or swim, I am not quitting God. Hell or high water, sink or swim, I'm not going to compromise my convictions. If it's in the Bible, I'll do it. If it's in His Word, I'll do it. I'll do it God's way. It doesn't matter what anybody says, I'll do it God's way. Father, help us to realize if we're going to endure, we have to have but if not. We have to look at Esther, if I perish, I perish. If we don't have that attitude, one of these days we'll compromise. One of these days we'll give in. One of these days we'll quit, because life is full of trials and mountains and valleys. Help us to never quit, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. You can be seated. But if not. By the way, do you know that 10 of our disciples, history says, were martyred? Martyred. Say, what's martyred? They were killed for their faith. And if I perish attitude means I decide not to quit God, not to compromise my biblical convictions, no matter what. No matter what. In our new building, we'll have part of the new building will be called the Adoniram Judson School of Missions. Adoniram Judson, you say, why? We're motivated by models, okay? And by the way, you got to be careful about putting people that are still alive, their names on buildings. You say, why? Because things might change and you might be taking their name down later on. Okay, let's get the dead people that have already proved themselves to be faithful. Adoniram Judson, you've heard some of the story. I'll share it again. Him and his wife were going to India. By the way, on the way to India, because of his study of the Bible, he became a Baptist Christian. And he changed, actually, he changed who he associated with. And he literally lost his support and lost missionary friends of a lifetime, because he said, these are convictions that I'll not change on. So he gets to India. They won't let him go there. And he ends up in Burma 6 years as a missionary. Can you imagine? Listen, if you weren't here on Thursday night, you missed it. Be here on this coming Thursday. This past Thursday, my brother just gave a highlight of Cambodia, which was such an encouragement. This coming Thursday, he'll highlight Laos. Oh, Thailand. Okay, then the third Sunday will be Laos. But can you imagine Brother Board, first year, just want to let you know we're faithful. Not one person's been saved. And then the second year, he sends a letter or he sends us a clip. Hey, here's our house. Here's the Mekong River. Here's the people. We're like, where's the church? Where's the converts? And he's like, we're now on our 24th month. And we did have one person take a track, but no one has become a Christian. And then it's 36 months. And then it's 48 months. And now it's 5 years. Now, I'll tell you what I'm saying. Like, you know what? I think God's sending you to another country. Okay, you are there with your children and your wife, and you're not seeing any converts. You have no church. You've been there for 6 years. He was there for 6 years. 18 years without ever, Judson, 18 years without ever coming home to visit back here in America. But when he came back, everybody had heard about the great work he was doing in Burma. He was in Burma so long, he began to forget how to speak English. And when he would come and speak, he said, I can't really speak in more than just a few words in English. He was in a Burmese prison for 21 years, but he didn't quit. No converts for 6 years, but he didn't quit. He lost all of his mission support at one time because he became a Baptist, because who he was associated with their doctrine was off, while studying his Bible on the way to the mission field, but he didn't quit. By the way, Mrs. Ann Judson said, becoming a Baptist Christian has caused us more pain than anything which ever happened to us in our entire lives. But it was a conviction that they held. Adrian Judson and Ann Judson never quit. Judson lost his missionary friends, but he didn't quit. Adrian Judson lost 2 of his wives. By the way, he didn't have 2 at a time. Lost one. He remarried. He lost another one. He was married 3 times. First one died on the mission field. Second one died on the mission field. And then he got married again. By the way, he said when he lost his wife, he said, I lost my wife, I lost my friends. He said, Jesus will be my friend. 4 of Judson's children died. 4 of his 5 children died on the mission field. But he didn't quit. By the way, I'm glad he didn't quit. You say, why? Because now we have somebody that we can look to that endured as seeing him who's invisible. You say, Pastor, what's the point? The point is this. If we're going to stay with it, folks, look, pretty young church. I don't see many gray hairs. I see a lot on his beard right there. Okay? Most of us, we got some 20s. Most of the teenagers aren't in here, but we got some 20s. We got a lot of 30s in here. We got a few 40s. We're beginning to sprinkle in with some 50s. Got a couple 60s. And, okay, thanks. But we're pretty young. God willing, we can stick around and serve God for decades. You and I will not serve God for decades if we don't come to a place and say, listen, hell or high water, sink or swim, I'm not going to compromise on God. If I perish, I perish. No matter what, listen, as the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, but if he doesn't deliver me, but if it doesn't happen. Somebody recently, they said, well, I thought God was going to do this, so I just went ahead and did this. Let God be God. Let me say lastly, and we're done. And I mentioned this already. God often brings us to the brink of quitting to break generational curses. Jacob, the word Jacob means heel catcher or deceiver. Jacob's mother passed to him I call it, it's not original, it's in the Bible. S.M. Davis is he has a DVD on generational curses. Jacob's mother passed down a generational curse of deception. Jacob when he worked for Laban, though he was a hard worker and he did have a portion of God's blessing, but he was a deceiver. He deceived his father-in-law, of course. He deceived his father, and he deceived his brother. Heel catcher. Jacob, the word Jacob means deceit. That's what his name was. God, please get this, God often our problem that brings us to the time of wanting to quit is caused by a generational curse that's been passed to us. And that is the time. You remember Jacob. God told him to leave, but not the way he did. Jacob was always doing something, even if it was right, in a deceitful way. And Jacob leaves Laban, and God told him to leave, but he did not leave in the way he was supposed to. Everything had a level of deceit to it. And then finally, he wrestled with God. And it was the biggest trial in his life. The brother that he deceived 21 years ago, he was told he's coming here. The last thing he heard, his brother was going to kill him. Jacob believed that he was going to die. And Jacob now came to a point, what am I going to do? And you know what God did? God showed up. And basically God said, you know what, man, you've been a deceiver. You've been a trickster. It's a generational curse. It's time to break it. And Jacob wrestled with God. Let me say this. A lot of times when we're at the brink of quitting, whatever the circumstances are, you know what it is? It's God bringing us to a place to say, I want to change your name. And he said, Jacob, I want to change your name. Your name, Jacob, means deceiver, heel catcher. He said, I want to change your name to Israel, a prince with God. And at that time, Jacob could have been the deceiver, and Jacob wrestled with God, and he did not. And literally, there was a wrestling match with God in the Old Testament. Jesus sort of showed up in the Old Testament. He wrestled with God, and he said, listen, I've got to get this dealt with. My father was very smart. Actually, my dad reminds me a lot of my brother. Very, very smart. But he quit a lot. My dad was very humorous. But he quit a lot. My dad had a great personality. Very likable. But my dad quit a lot. My dad had wonderful people skills. But he quit a lot. My dad knew how to make money, but he quit a lot. We moved from Chicago to California because Dad quit. My dad moved from California to Arkansas because of problems, and he quit. He moved back to California. My dad had so many different jobs. By the way, he succeeded at them. Lose interest, had some problems, he go get another one. Management company, supervisor in Hollywood, here locally in Long Beach. That's what I grew up with. That was in me. I think my first semester of Bible college, it was almost like Jacob facing that Esau. I'll never forget, I went to Bible college just to get closer to God. And first thing I needed, my mom helped me with my airplane ticket to go to Indiana and get to Bible college. I had my first month's tuition. No grants. It was a private Bible college. No grants. No Pell. I don't know all the grants are. No one's giving me any money. I remember going time and time again to different steel mills and different companies, and it looked like my brother and I, we were roommates when we first got there. Everybody had a job in the dorms except for me. And after school, I'd come in. I'm the only one there. And I didn't want to show my face at the college because most at the college, most of the guys worked. It was mostly just girls over there. And I was discouraged. You say, what'd you want to do? I wanted to quit. I don't forget Thrall Car. You remember Thrall Car? It was a good job. They were going to hire me. They called me for an interview. I passed the interview, and they said, just go down and get the physical. I went and got the physical, and I opened my big mouth, and they said, tell me, and they said, anything about your heart? And I said, well, way back so-and-so, they told me I had a heart murmur. My doctor later on said, I was dumb. You shouldn't have told me that. That heart murmur is gone a long time ago. I lost that job. My next bill comes. I don't have it. I call back home. I had a motorcycle and a car. I sold my motorcycle for that next bill. Still, I'm not only feeling like I can't pay my bills, I'm feeling like a loser. Everybody else is getting jobs. I'm going to the same places. I'm hoping, I'm praying as much as everybody else, and I can't get a job. Sold my motorcycle, sold my car. But I didn't quit. I wanted to quit. I didn't quit. By the way, I was a little disillusioned. I thought I would be the worst Christian in the whole Bible college. I got in those dorms, I'm like, whoa. These guys, let me just say this, folks, no superheroes out there. We're all a bunch of sinners saved by the grace of God. And quit putting standards on people that you don't even come close to living. Okay? And there I was. I got disillusioned. I'm like, man, there's some of these guys, I've never seen them read their Bible. I've never seen them pray. So here I am. I don't have the money to pay, but I didn't quit. And I believe what God was doing, he was bringing me to a point to say, listen, there's quit in your DNA. There's quit there. And by the way, it took me years to even think about this. And that's what you've seen all of your life. All of your life. It was like, go somewhere else and try something else and go somewhere else. And it was like God saying, listen, hard times are not to run. Hard times are not to go somewhere else. Just go through it. Never forget, I'm second semester. Now I'm really and I got to get registration. I'm like, I'm sure my pastor's going to tell me to come home because I remember some Bible verse about not borrowing money. And I called him. I said, the only way I can get in this next semester if I borrow money, and I know, and he's going, borrow it. My aunt loaned me some money. And I still didn't get a job. Then the first job I got, I am beat up. I'm beat up mentally, emotionally. I'm not beat up physically because I'm not working. By the way, mentally and emotionally, a lot worse than physically. Then God says, now I'm going to beat you up physically. I got a job at Coke Contracting. Not what you guys have been selling, okay? Coke Contracting. We're on Lake Michigan, and they have these big hills of Coke, okay? And never forget, I'll go there. My aunt, who was an executive secretary for Inland Steel, she said, show up in South Chicago. I had no car. I had no motorcycle. You say, what'd you have? How many remember when you used to use that? Remember that? Serious. I used my thumb to get to work. I went there. The guy says, I didn't know what. She said, show up. They got a job for you. It's not who you are, it's who you know. I knew my aunt. My aunt, she was the executive secretary for Inland Steel. She knew steel people. I'm like, wow, I figure I'm going to be a janitor or something. There's this huge payloader, front-end payloader. You see the Bobcat? About 7 of those. High. And the guy said, go climb up in there and talk to him. I'm going, wow, I guess he's going to tell me what to do. I climb up there, and he says, have you ever driven one of these? I'm going, he's kidding. He says, I said, no. He says, get in a seat. I'm going, he's kidding me. I'm scared to death. My new job is operating this. The tire is bigger than me. And I started, and front end's going like this. I'm bouncing. I'm going, I'm fired already. By the way, it paid good. I was on call. And what I would do is I would run into this big hill of Coke, get that front end. You guys see the Bobcat, but my front end bucket was as big as the whole Bobcat. Lift it up, bring it over to this big bucket that you dump it into. It goes on a conveyor. The conveyor goes into the ship that's on Lake Michigan. And my first day, I'm going, no way. God, I will work as a janitor at McDonald's. Come on, right there by the college, there's like a Jack-in-a-Box. Now, every once in a while, I think my brother would give me a ride. I was on call. You say, what hours did you work? I worked whenever they said, at the information desk, we have the message for the following people: Joe Esposito, Mike Smith. And I go there, and they say, you can come in from at 2 o'clock in the morning. A ship will be here from Germany. Say, what kind of sleeping schedule? None. Whenever they said come to work, I worked. Sometimes I would work 18 straight hours. You say, why? Because I had to pay my school bill. You say, what'd you do after 18 straight hours? I'd get up. By the way, I was black. My whole face was black. Up in my nose was black. I had black boogies. Black in my ear. Black in, I was all black. I look in the mirror, I'm going, whoa. I now know what I'd look like if I was a black person. You say, well, were you tired? Then I'd get home, you say, then what'd you do? I washed my face off, and sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, South Chicago. I'm going all the way to another state. I'm 25 miles, 30 miles away. You say, what'd you do? 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I got off. You say, who was out at 3 o'clock in the morning? The people that you don't want to pick you up. And there's only a few of them. People that just got out of a 2 o'clock in the morning bar that just closed down. You say, listen, I don't care what it was. If it was a buggy, I'd get in it. I'm walking miles. You say, Pastor, what's the point? The point is this. You know what God was doing? He brought me. You say, did you want to quit? Man, then I got home. Hopefully I got home or got to my dorms before 7 because I didn't need to take a shower. Then I had to go to school. You say, what was God doing? He was doing something in my soul. I'll tell you one thing he was doing. He was teaching me, don't quit. Don't quit. God bless you. Rest your dad. I hope he's in heaven. And he wasn't a Christian and he wasn't taught right, but he quit. And I saw quitting. And God was saying, listen, there's never a time to quit. Listen, you don't have money, don't quit. It's hard. You got to hitchhike. Listen, some of our single guys, if you don't have a car and you can have a good job, and it's not a perfect wage, you know what you do? You just quit. Let's bow our heads for just a moment.